Hi, the sporting event that I attended was a women's running race. It was held Sunday, August 23rd in Pinole, California, which is just outside of San Francisco. They offered a 5K, a 10K, and a half marathon. With all those choices, they had 378 attendees. I chose to speak to 10 women about the event, and I had asked them initially as to how many running events that they have done within the past year. I was surprised to find that 5 of them had run 10 or more races over the prior year, 2 had run 7 to 9, 2 had run 2 to 3, and 1 had run 1. This was her first race. I followed up with a question of whether or not the fact that this event was women's only had an impact on their decision to come. Interestingly enough, that did not play much into their decision-making process. A couple of the women felt that that was, something that they enjoyed and they did seek out, but overall that was not something that they used as a criteria in which to come and do the race. I did ask the one woman, who, this being her first race, if that was the reason why she came, and she said no as well. I next inquired about their overall experience. For the most part, the women were firmly on the end of the fact that the event was excellent in their minds. Interestingly enough, there were 2 women who were highly disappointed with the event, and I will get to that later. But I do want to point out that these 2 women also fell into the highest ranking household income categories, which I found to be very interesting. 7 out of 10 women that I polled would come back and do this particular Girls on the Go run in Pinole, California, whereas all 10 said that they would do another Girls on the Go run since they have a series of races up and down the state of California. When asking the women what stood out most as their favorite part of the event, they happily said supportive volunteers, which is really a nice thing in an all-women's event. The second thing that they mentioned the most was the course. It was on packed dirt and it was along the water, so it was beautiful despite a very foggy morning. And lastly, they talked about the theme, that it was a women's theme, and they got to wear tutus, and there were a lot of people wearing pink, and it was just a very joyful community. I then chose to ask the women what was the worst thing of the event, what stood out as something that could be changed, and did they have an idea? And they, all 10, unanimously said that the expo was a little to be desired. There had been a lot of advertising and a lot of hype about the post-race party, and it was a pretty lean vendor showing. From a demographic standpoint, these were primarily women in their 30s and their 40s. And from a household income standpoint, they were predominantly in the $50,000 to $75,000 range. I had a great time doing the data collection at this event. The women were excited to speak to me. They started to line up to speak to me, and it was just a great atmosphere. The questionnaire was simple and concise. They knew exactly what to say, or quickly, and I didn't have any problem with that. So this I could see myself doing again. I really enjoyed it, and it was in an environment which I'm very, very comfortable. Lastly, I want to circle back to what I would say to the event producers. I am no stranger to running events. I've done countless Ironmans, marathons, you name it. So I have seen races, I have worked on putting on races, and I would say the biggest thing is what the women did speak to, the expo. If you look on the website, it's very clear, it's inspiring, it's exciting, and you get to this event or this particular event, and as the one picture showed, it was very lean and not very inspiring. So I did notice that women were not staying, that they were leaving soon after they finished. The awards ceremony was incredibly lackluster, and just it was disappointing. It was very disappointing overall, in my perspective. The other thing I wanted to point out was something that fascinated me, because even though the event, had sort of this lackluster feel to it, um, these women were excited. They were happy, and not that I wouldn't be had I been able to run it. But in light of the fact that it was a $60 entry fee, which I thought was incredibly steep, um, they loved it. The other thing that really struck me was that they were predominantly in the $50,000 to $75,000 range of household income. Now, $60 is a lot of money for a race, especially when they're traveling, 60 miles, and then to get what they got, and that this is what they spend their discretionary income on. And for those that run, 10 races a year, a lot of them were trying to do one race a month. I thought that was very interesting, and it was very enlightening for me, just considering, my history and my choice of races and whatnot. Thanks for listening. Bye.